Hello, my name is Michael Fay. I'd like to present to you a talk on understanding Morgan dollar VAMs, a primer. The word VAM is an acronym for Leroy Van Allen and A. George Mallis. Those are the authors of the comprehensive catalog of Morgan and Peace dollars, which we're going to be referring to extensively in this talk. The reason for the talk is I want to make it easy for you to understand this area. A lot of people are turned off by the book because they see a lot of what looks like scientific notation and complications, which I will hopefully clear up for everybody. I would like to thank Ray Williams, former president of the New Jersey Numismatic Society, and also former president of the C4 Colonial Coin Collectors Club. And Ray, if you can start us up with the first slide, I would appreciate it. So you may have an opportunity to come back to these slides because there is some complexity to them. So you can either make a copy of this talk or you can contact me by email, which I will get to at the end of this talk. And maybe I'll be able to send you the PowerPoint, all these slides that you can peruse through. Next slide, Ray. Okay, so here are my objectives for this presentation. I want to provide you with an advanced understanding of Morgan dollars. I want to help increase your knowledge in attributing Morgan dollar varieties, increase your ability to cherry pick rare Morgan dollar varieties, and of course, this will lead to enhancement of your enjoyment and profitability of the hobby, especially with Morgan dollars. Next slide. So just so you know who I am, I'm a former president of the Society of Silver Dollar Collectors, actually a founder of the second Society of Silver Dollar Collectors. I'm a former governor of the American Numismatic Association. This was now back in 2007. And I'm currently the senior instructor for the American Numismatic Association's summer seminar on collecting and investing in Morgan silver dollars. I was the co-author of the top 100 Morgan dollar varieties, the VAMs, with Jeff Oxman, which was first published in 1997. A picture can be seen in the lower right corner of your screen, a small little pocket book that you can fit in your pocket. Provided all sorts of wonderful information about the top 100, the best ones to go out there and find and cherry pick. This was published again later. We're up to a 4th edition now. And yeah, and I'm also author of A Decade of Top 100 Insights, which was a decade-long newsletter published quarterly, as well as pricing guide. That all comes from all new numismatic people, luminaries in the hobby who helped publish that newsletter and did ghostwriting. And it's a fantastic resource if you can get it and read through it. Still good. I'm currently the author of the Complete Guide to Pricing Morgan Silver Dollars, which is an ebook on Amazon.com. I've discovered more than 50 new Morgan dollar varieties and probably over 100 of other series, all US types, and a few foreign coins. I was the first to ever complete a set of the 41 die pairs of the 1878 eight-tail feather varieties, which we call the champagne of Morgan dollars. Variety collectors love eight-tail feathers. It's a short series and it's full of ultra rarities. About half of the varieties are ultra rare. When you go out and find one and pay $50 for it and turn around and sell it for $5,000, you're one happy person. So that's a very fruitful area to study. And I'm currently displaying in the Morgan Dollar Museum at the A&A Museum in Colorado Springs, a silver dollar collection for the last 5 years on all different ways to collect silver dollars. Next slide. So what are you going to need to get started doing this? Absolutely a good light source. I currently use a halogen light. The time I bought it was like $28, 10, 12 years ago. I'm assuming it's 40, maybe more, maybe less. I don't know. Absolutely a good loop, which I call an elephant gun. You can't hunt elephants without having an elephant gun. I use a 10X Hastings triplet by Bosch and Loam. It's about $40. You can find it on eBay. Very minimal distortion. Triplets are very good low distortion loops, and Bosch and Loam makes very good optics. And then finally, the big VAM book, which is also called the Comprehensive Catalog and Encyclopedia of Morgan and Peace Dollars. You can find these either on eBay or Bob Paul. Bob Paul's email is listed up there. You might want to write it down, contact him directly, tell him how you found out about it. Maybe he'll give you a discount, but he is the publisher of that book and he has the books. And finally, you'll need a computer or an iPhone with access to VAMworld.com, which is the other half of the big VAM book. Next slide. So this is the book we've been talking about. This is what the cover looks like on the 4th edition. There have been 3 other editions. Each edition has gotten bigger. This book is now about 2 inches thick. It's about 500 pages, chock full of information. So the most important thing you can do when you get this book is to read it. Most people buy the book and hardly ever look at it after that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what's important in the book. Next slide. Okay, so the book has a number of different chapters. Right now we're focusing on Morgan's. The first 5 chapters are chock full of historical information. Lots of tables, lots of graphs, information about mintages and rarities, GSAs and numbers, Pittman Act, the melting of coins over time. There's been a lot of melting. The first Morgan struck, patterns. I mean, it is just chock full of information. I'm not saying right now it's the most important thing for you to read. Know it's there. Maybe look at each page just to have in your mind where some graphs are and some tables, should you need to refer it in the future. I do want you to read chapter 6, which provides a detailed description with lots of pictures of the Morgan dollar designs. We're only talking about, 9 pages, and most of it is big pictures with very little words, but you absolutely have to look at, and I would say study chapter 6. Not difficult. Again, just a lot of pictures with descriptions. You also should read chapter 7. It's a discussion of the significant varieties. Again, that goes from page 106 to page 142. And again, full of information. We'll go over some of it here, but copious pictures. And the pictures are extremely important. If I were to do the pictures that are in the big VAM encyclopedia, we'd be sitting here for hours, literally. You can buy the book, you can follow through the slides, follow through what I'm saying, look at the pictures, and you'll understand everything that I'm talking about. Finally, chapter 8, which goes from 145 to about page 430. You have all the Morgan dollar die varieties listed up until 1991. And we're going to go over how to understand those. That's not something you really have to read, but you should refer to it as you're going through your coins to see if your coins match known die varieties. And if not, you can become a discoverer of a new variety. There have been thousands of new varieties discovered since I published the Top 100 book in 1997. Thousands. Next slide. Okay, and beyond the VAM book, this is important because after publishing his 1991 book, that's all the information we've had. And obviously, with all these thousands of new discoveries, how are you going to know, what's up to date or not? How are you going to know whether you have something new? But this explosion of interest that occurred after we published the Top 100 and led to thousands of new discoveries are now listed at VAMworld.com. It's a wiki site. You should go up there. You should get familiar with the site. You can look at all the different dates. You can look at all the descriptions, all the pictures of the new discoveries, as well as the old ones. It's the whole VAM book in there, plus all the discoveries since 1991. Included is great information about populations, how many are known and what grades, you name it. Everything you need to know who it was discovered by is listed in this wiki site. A wiki site is a public site. Everybody contributes to it and updates it. Also, there are numerous reference books on the subject that were published in the past 2 decades. Beside my top 100 book, which was co-authored with Jeff Oxman, you have Jeff Oxman's Hot 50 book, his His List 40 book, his 8-Tail Feather book, which I hope you can get a copy of. Very hard to find that book. The 7/8 book. And Leroy Van Allen has created probably several dozen VAM supplements, each of which is fantastic in and of themselves. Just like the Big VAM Encyclopedia, you don't really appreciate it as much until you spend some time, and then you realize what a magnificent piece of work Mr. Malice and Mr. Van Allen did. Now, Mr. Malice died fairly early, so it was Leroy Van Allen who's been carrying the torch. And again, kudos to Leroy. Fantastic effort. Really the father of Morgan Dollar varieties. Next slide. So this is a very complicated slide, but it's important that you understand that in order for us to communicate things, in order for Leroy to communicate to us, we have to describe everything we see on the Morgan Dollar. This is the obverse. Now, I usually start down at the date when I look at Morgan Dollars. First thing I do is give it an overall look. I flip the coin over from top to bottom to see if it's aligned exactly right, top to bottom. And if it's not, then I have a rare rotated dies coin. If it's more than 15 degrees, which up to 15-degree rotation, either way, is considered normal, clockwise or counterclockwise. So again, I start at the date. I start to go around the right side of the coin. I look at R1, which is labeled there as the first star, all the way up to star 6. Look for anything that's abnormal. Then I look at the motto. I might look at the Phrygian cap, which is a Freeman's cap, at the leaves, at the cotton balls, at the motto, E pluribus, certainly at the denticles, and certainly in the date relative to the denticles, and where the end of numbers point to on the denticles, because that helps in determining date position. I look at the legend, Liberty. I look at the hair, the forehead, the upper hair curl, the eye, especially Miss Liberty's eye and eyelid, her nose, her mouth, her lips, her chin. There's an area called the V of Miss Liberty's neck, which is just above the neckline where it meets her chin. We see a lot of clashing there. And indeed, in the big Morgan VAM Encyclopedia, he has an overlay of what normal clashing looks like. But if you have rotation, clashing is not normal anymore. You might see clashing in really strange places. Those are very rare. So let's flip it over to the next slide. And we have the same thing on the reverse. Again, looks complicated. Gets real simple if you study it a little bit. But you can see we have the mint mark location at the very bottom center. And as you work your way around to the right, we have arrows. We have the laurel wreaths. We can count those laurel wreaths. And if we see something anomalous, we can say, right laurel wreath 3, so on. Now, this is important to understand. When you're communicating and you look at the right wing, it's the observer's right, but it's actually the eagle's left wing. So you have to be cognizant of that. And the same with the right wing. They're opposite of what you might think as you are the observer, okay? We look at the motto, "In God We Trust." We look at the legend, and so on and so forth, all the way down. and in particular the arrow feathers. This becomes important because some of the design differences happen right there. On this one, we see a reverse of 79 with the top arrow feather slanting up. That's key because the reverse of 78 has that top arrow feather not slanting up, but parallel to the other feathers in the arrow. The other thing that's important is the knock. It's not listed here, but the knock is if you think about where the arrow goes when you shoot an arrow, that's the knock. It's the very center wooden part of the arrow. And that's the knock. And we have long knocks and short knocks, very important in design differences. So again, you could spend some time learning those, not complicated. It's just a matter of understanding how to communicate and how to read what somebody else is communicating. Let's go to the next slide. This is probably the most important slide that I'm going to give you because everything you see is shorthand. Even VAM is shorthand. These are just names. And Leroy, as an engineer, is a very logical person. So this is a logical assignment of names. So you'll see Roman numerals for obverse designs, and you will see large capital letters for reverse designs. For example, if you look at chapter 6, page 99, you'll see these all in pictures. And there are other differences going on, but in general, there are only 4 major obverse designs. The 8-tail feather design, which is obverse 1, the 7/8, which is obverse 2 impressed over obverse 1, a dual hubbing. You see 7-tail feathers, which is just obverse 2. And then obverse 3 would be 7-tail feathers, reverse of 79, which is the slanted arrow feather, not the parallel one as in obverse 2. And then there's a 3-1 and a 3-2. Now those are that's not squared. It just means that there are 2 different 3s that you want to look at. And an obverse 4 is totally different obverse. It's a totally different major design, only happens on 1921s. Same can be said for reverse designs. Again, all in capital letters. You have the A reverses, which are 8-tail feathers, the B/A's, 7/8s, the B's are 7-tail feathers. Now you have a B1, which is a long knock. We spoke about the knock. We have a B2, which is a short knock. There are other differences, but these are the major differences that describe it. Everything is done in shorthand, so you don't have to keep repeating long knock or this is an 1878 long knock or whatever. You know it's a B1 reverse. And C reverse are all reverse of 79s. And the C reverses were made all the way to 1904. From 1879, from that first year, all the way to 1904. Some coins, like the 79S, were struck with the reverse of 78. These are die pairings. So when they were pulling dies off the shelf, they pulled an old die, an old reverse die, and matched it up with a new date die, 1879, 1880. There's also a reverse. Actually, later on in 1904, we have some of these C4 impressed over C3, and we see double berries. That's the best way to tell a C4 over C3. And then, of course, the D design is the 1921 reverse, totally different design. You have D1 and D2, which has to do with the number of berries on the reverse. And so that's it. It's simple. When you see these listings in VAM, we'll go over one of them just to show you. They're not crazy scientific notation. They're logical, easy to understand labels or names, nomenclature, which is just a name. Next slide. So here's a sample VAM listing. And we have to think about what was going on in both of their minds, Leroy Van Allen and A. George Malice, back when they first started doing this. So they were looking at coins, thousands of coins, and they were separating them out by date and by mint mark. And the first one they picked up happened to be an 8-tail feather, 1878, and they called it VAM-1 for lack of anything else to call it. It's the first one they picked up. And then they go to describe it, and then they show you pictures of it in the VAM book. So I'm going to jump all the way up to the 160th coin they pulled up. which happened to be an 1878 with a 2/1 obverse. And what that means is that it had a double liberty. Liberty on the headband was double. It was the 20th coin they pulled up, and it had a new reverse that they never found before called a B2C reverse. That C should be a small c, by the way, and it is on the second line down. I'll describe that in a second. So what you have, the B2 is a short knock reverse, and it's the C reverse. It's the third reverse that he found, A, B, C. Okay, it's real simple. And he puts in parentheses the major defining difference on this B2C reverse, which happens to be, shows you a picture once of that B2C reverse, happens to be a broken R in trust. The top portion of the letter is broken. So now you know what a B2C reverse is, and it creates a whole block of coins from 160 to 171 that he's discovered with that B2C reverse. Now he describes the obverse. This obverse had a shifted P. So on the right side of the P, you see around the rounded part of the P to the right side, like a crescent, which is a shifted P, another P that was struck in there or punched in to the die. And then next to that, you see 194, which means he counted the reads. There's reading changes throughout the Morgandalla series. He provides a wonderful table of all the different read counts known for all the different Morgandallas. Imagine sitting counting reads for thousands of silver dollars and then putting them in a table. I'm telling you, this work is unbelievable that he did. All right, and then he talks about an I2, which is an interest factor. And then he talks about an R4, which is a rarity factor. Now, I wrote down estimated and estimated because it might take you a while to figure out that it's just common sense. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so he's looking through thousands of these coins, maybe tens of thousands. I don't know, I wasn't there to see it, but I have to imagine. So he used his experience looking at all these coins to describe a combination of a wow factor and an interest factor into a number from 1 to 5. I1 being the lowest, I5 being the highest. For example, we know the strongest double die in the Morgandalla series is the 1880 VAM-4 Hot Lips, where the entire obverse design is double, but most notably on the lips, the chin, the nose, actually in the cotton bowls, in the leaves, and so on and so forth. So why would he not assign I5 to that, the highest wow factor in the series? Also, the 1901 Morgandalla 7/7 tail feathers was another one. Very radical, the strongest double die reverse in the series. He assigned an interest factor of 5 to that. And it turns out both of them are pretty scarce varieties. Next slide. So how would he know about rarity? How is it possible early on when he was doing this, even back in 1991, to know how many coins are out there? Well, the answer is he didn't. But he was using his market experience and his experience looking at coins to assign rarity numbers. If he saw a coin more than once, he thought it would be common. If he very rarely saw a coin, he thought it would be rare. So he arbitrarily came up with rarity numbers. Now we have population reports. We have the ability to see what's been graded in date and in mint mark and in condition. And we do what I call, we look at the relative rarity of coins, which I think is a much better way than looking at populations or looking at mintages in general. So I can basically look up the relative rarity of an 1879 CC, for example, in mint state grades, and compare that to another coin, I don't know, an 1881 CC in mint state. I can see that relatively there's far fewer graded of the 79 CC than the 81 CC. And in reality, you'll come to find out you can create a ratio and actually see which coins just don't show up. 79 CC happens to be a very underrated coin in higher grades. and so on and so forth. Now, if it's an R, he calls it an R1, it's common. He says there are tens of millions around. He can't possibly know that. He's estimating. R2, not so common, several million. R3, scarce, hundreds of thousands. R4, very rare, tens of thousands. Now, I purposely highlighted R5 to R8 because that's when it gets interesting. R5 coins are rare, he calls them. There are only several thousands of them out there. R6 is a very rare with several hundreds. R7's extremely rare with few tens. And R8s are unique or nearly unique, several coins. I have found R8 coins on many occasions, actually discovered many new eight-tail feather varieties in which there was only one known for a time. And then all of a sudden, one or two or three, four more pop up. So again, you got to take these kind of with a grain of salt. He did an incredible job in coming up with this information, but you have to understand relative rarity. So I would say that not in any coins you look at in any series, you should look at the certified populations and determine relative rarities to know which are undervalued and which are overvalued. Next slide, please. These, by the way, were all identified in page 8 of the beginning of the VAM book. He gives you a definition of all of them. So I would like to discuss now the significant varieties of coins that you'll encounter. And this is important to know because you will encounter these coins when you're out there hunting for varieties or hunting for coins or just looking at Morgan dollars. You got to know what they are. He divided these into 3 different areas: planchet errors, die errors and varieties, and striking errors. This first one is planchet errors. Now, again, pictures are in the VAM book. I'm not going to show you pictures here. I'm going to talk a little bit about them, but you have to get the VAM book and look at the pictures because a picture's worth 1,000 words, and I certainly don't want to plagiarize everything in the VAM book. You need to get the Big VAM Encyclopedia and have it as a reference. So occluded gas. This is when a planchet is made and it's not properly annealed and gas gets caught in the planchet, particularly near the surface. You get these little bubbles. Some of them break off, and you can see those in Morgan dollars. I don't see them that often, but it's called occluded gas, and he has a picture of it. Club planchets you'll find, particularly in 21s, not extremely rare, but they are kind of cool. This is when the planchets were being cut originally. They were cut in mass, and some of them were clipped with single clips, some were double clipped, some were multiple clips. Some of them get very weird. The bigger the wow factor, the greater the clipping, the more valuable the coin. Laminated planchets, same thing. This was improper metal that peeled away as the metal was cooling, and it was struck, coin was struck, and pieces of the metal peeled off. You see this a lot on war nickels, 1943 to 45. But you see them on silver dollars. They're not terribly rare, but the really big ones are rare and certainly command premium. I've had dealers sell me laminated planchets that were ridiculously large, and they thought they were just culls, and I'd buy them at cull prices. Impure metal streaks, sometimes you'll see black sludge, which is struck through a coin. Another metal streaks, these distract more than anything else, but when they're big and noticeable, they tend to have a premium. You'll see cracked planchets, cracked from the edge. You'll also see split planchets, planchets that actually cracked all the way through. These are quite rare, quite valuable, but these are planchet types of errors. Next slide, please. So we go into die errors and varieties now, and there's 2 pages here of this. I'll just go through them rather quickly. You've got re-engraved 1878 Philadelphia varieties. What's going on here? Now you got to think back to 1878. They're doing a lot of this stuff by hand. So master die, the whole minting process is shown in those first 6 chapters I told you about. You need to read that and understand it. But what's happening here is you're getting touch-up work by the engravers, and they're doing different things to Morgan dollars, particularly on 8 feathers. They were re-engraving the wings, under the wings. I call them the armpits, with feathers. They were actually engraving feathers into the die. And that's what makes the 8-tailed feathers so darn interesting. They were struck in higher relief than any other Morgan dollars, and they were struck differently with all these engraved feathers that were not done later on. So these are very, very cool. There was re-engraving done in 1878 at San Francisco, and all the way up to 1879 when they were experimenting with acids, using acids to change some of the die features. They used, for example, acid on the bottom of the wing of one of the 1878 S dollars. We call that a lava wing. All sorts of craziness is going on in 1878 as these new coins were born, and they were trying to figure out how to strike them and save money on dies, because die making was very expensive at the time. We also have hub breaks and die cracks. Again, the most notable one is the 1888 O Scarface, with a big crack across Miss Liberty's face. Very popular coin, very much in demand. I remember buying one for $100 in an old SSDC auction in Mint State. Now they go for $7,000, $8,000 and more and up. Wonderful coins to collect. They're very neat. But cracks are very important, not only for Morgan series, but for all other coins, because cracks represent die states. No cracks or proof-like coins or deep mirror proof-like coins are very early die states, coins that were struck with fresh dies. Sometimes the dies were exchanged. Sometimes you had a new die that was taken out of service early, as in the VAM-44, 1878, the king of Morgan dollar varieties. The die broke very early. It broke in its a little bit after its proof-like stage. So we know, or we're guessing, only a few hundred coins were ever made of that particular variety. That's why it's so rare and so desirable. And it has triple cotton blossoms and leaves. It's in the top 100. Cracks progress as a coin is struck under pressure, all the way to the point where the cracks are so big, chunks break out of the coin, and you get these very late die states, which are rare unto themselves. And these very late die states, just before the die was taken out of service, didn't strike a lot of coins in most cases, because the die was cracking under pressure. And so those coins become rare. When you find those coins in this and in other series, your antenna has to go up, because it may be a very rare and valuable coin. We have double dies. We spoke about the hot lips and the 01 double die reverse. There are many double dies in the Morgan dollar series. Dual hub dies like 7/8s. We spoke about C4 over C3 reverses. Date positions and dashes. You know, again, we weren't there. We don't know why they put dashes, perhaps to align digits, but there's various date positions relative to the dentals below, and dashes, particularly on 1884. You'll see dashes under the numbers. Mispositioned mint mark placements are all over the place. Again, you know, those need to be communicated as different dies. Some of them are not rare, some of them are rare. You just have to look at the VAM book or look at VAMworld.com. There are double dates. An example is an 1892 S VAM2, where you see remnants of 2 separate dates struck. And there are many others. Double mint marks, O over O's, S over S's, and so on and so forth. Next slide. I don't want to kill these, but you have overdates like 7/6 and 8/7. Dual mint marks, as in the large CC over small CC on the 1879 capped die. You have clash dies. Leroy presents a wonderful picture showing the normal clash dies where clashing shows up. But again, if you have rotation going on, the clashing is not going to show up in a normal place. And it's difficult to figure that out, but they become very rare. Recently, in the last couple of years, We have E clash reverses from Liberty on the obverse, the E of Liberty on the obverse. The coin dies clash together without a coin in between, imparting information from the obverse die to the reverse die, from the reverse die back to the obverse die. And then we had a counter clash where that E now shows up on the obverse, up, high up above Miss Liberty's head. And very cool to see an E clash on the obverse, for only one we know of a clash letter on the obverse. Very rare also. That's on an 1889 O. We have die scratches and gouges, as in the 1880 O hangnail, VAM-1A. We have over polished dies, as in the 3 different 1878 washed out L. This obverse die with the washed out L, which means that it was likely over polished, shows up on a B1 reverse, shows up on a B2 reverse, and shows up on a reverse of 79 on a C reverse. The one that shows up on the B2 reverse is pretty scarce in higher grades. We have mint mark variations, round O's, oval O's, large mint marks, micro mint marks, micro O's, all great stuff. Date variations, again, edge reading. And I wanted to add, since 1991, 2 new ones were added that you'll see in VAMworld.com. One is overlapping reading, where the swedge tool went beyond its 90 degrees. We don't really know whether it covered 360 or 90, but we see reads that overlap. So we assume that it went too long in cutting the reading on the die holders. And so we see often opposite, we see also overlapping reading, and in some cases 3 sets of overlapping reading, which are very peculiar. So this is a new die variety we've seen. And there's been one new discovery of a rare 1878 VAMs-A with a very low read count. Leroy reported a 179 and a 193 read count. 179 is normal, that's what you normally see. 193 read count doesn't show up very often. But one rainy day, I was counting my VAMs-As, and I happened to find one with a 179 read count. Turned out it was a trade dollar collar. Very cool. I haven't seen very many VAMs-As, which are common 8-tail feathers, with the 179 read count. Next slide. And then finally, we have striking errors, such as the master hub die doubling, 8-tail feathers, 7/8, die pressure adjustment pieces, as they were adjusting the pressure on the coins from the beginning of a striking. If it was too weak, the pressure, you got weak reading. The coin didn't spread all the way into the reeds. When you have weak strikes, you had strong reading, okay? There's a big difference between the two, because I've twice now bought coins that were sold as weak strikes that had strong reading, but were very rare and expensive die adjustment pieces. Very rare, very expensive die adjustment with weak reading. You have misaligned dies, obverse and the reverse. This can occur where the dies are off center a little bit, whereas the other side is on center. You've got rotated. I love rotated dies. I think they're very undervalued. Any dies that are greater than 15% clockwise or counterclockwise are considered rotated dies. In the Morgenthaler series, there's not that many out of a huge minage. And I just think these coins have a great wow factor when you see them, and their day will come. You have partial collars. We call these railroad rims. They can be straight around the coin. They can be tilted. They can be on an angle. All cool stuff. These are coins that weren't struck fully in the collar, and they create these railroad rims. You have broad strikes, coins which spread out like a pancake, larger than a normal coin. These are very rare, very expensive to find, very difficult to find. They do exist. Even rarer are the multiple strikes. You can get double or multiple struck coins very few exist, and even fewer are the capped or brockage dies, where another Morgan dollar was struck in between two dies and a coin, and you get information imparted from that dollar onto the coin. I think there's one or two of these known. They're very rare, very expensive. A little more common, you get coins that are struck through. They're struck through grease, wood, metal, sometimes the canvas bag. These are coins that, again, there are pictures in the VAM book. All of these have pictures that you can easily see and become accustomed to and know what they are. And finally, machine doubling, which really carries no premium. But a lot of people confuse this with double dies or doubling. These are loose dies. When the dies were a little bit loose in the machines and struck, they had the ability to move sideways, north, south, east, or west, any direction. And what you get is a shelf life like projection on the coin throughout the coin, not just in one area. And this is called machine doubling, and there's no premium whatsoever. Next slide. So I want to take you now beyond the VAM book. Again, we talked about VAMworld.com. So once you get the VAM book, once you read it, look at the pictures, become familiar with it, maybe take a few coins out and play with it. Then you're going to want to continue on to VAMworld.com and use that as your supplement, especially for newer discoveries. I also, again, encourage you to go to Leroy Van Allen directly. His supplements are very inexpensive. They're not book-like, but he puts them in a booklet form, but they're extremely detailed, extreme amount of information, just like the VAM book. Cherry picking rare dye varieties for fun and profit. You can do this right off eBay if you want. You can see any given day, thousands of coins, thousands of silver dollars. You can actually call up one date and say, every time a new 1878 eight-tail feather comes up, send me a link to it or send me information of what it is, and you'll get a link and you'll be able to look at all the brand new coins that get put up before anybody else looks at it. I would also advise you to go to the American Numismatic Association's summer seminar, particularly the one that I and John Baumgart and Isaac Wally give on collecting and investing in Morgan silver dollars. We usually have about 15 people in the class, but it's all hands-on. And we go soup to nuts, we go grading, we have examples of all the coins, everything is touching and feeling and looking and explaining. In depth, everything you'd ever want to know is there. Fantastic, highly recommend it. We didn't have one last year because of COVID. We did a Zoom. We had 500 people attend our Zoom seminar. It was a 2-hour short summer seminar. I also advise you, if you can, get the Top 100 book, my Morgan Dollar Variety book, now in its 4th edition, with me and Jeff Oxman as the author. That launched a whole resurgence in VAM collecting. The grading services started grading all these VAMs. It really added a whole new dimension to Morgan Dollar collecting, which before that was date, mint mark, a grade, proof like, and that was it. And now you add varieties in, and it's a whole new dimension. Then I also would urge you to read my other book, A Decade of Top 100 Insights, because again, not just me, but the who's who of silver dollar people in numismatics, like Bill Feva, like Larry Briggs, Jeff Oxman, a host of others, all writing articles in there. It's timeless. And also, we're going to talk about the complete guide to pricing your Morgan silver dollars, which is a new ebook that I created that's up at Amazon.com. Jeff Oxman has created wonderful books. If you can get the 8-tail feather book, no matter what it costs, get it. I think he's out of print on them, and they're in such demand. Maybe you can plead with him and he'll print an extra one for you, or maybe even make a copy of one of his. His 7/8 book, his Hot 50 book, his Hit List 40 book, all fantastic books. He also has a Peace Dollar book that's fantastic, highly recommended. You can reach Jeff Oxman directly at jeffssdc@aol.com. mention I sent you, okay? And then also, I'd like to thank Bill Fiva and JT Stanton, the Cherry Picker's Guide to Rare Dye Varieties. They listed about 20 different varieties that were special and rare and valuable, could be cherry picked. And my book expanded it to 100. So we've taken a lot of information from them and give them kudos for coming up with the Cherry Picker's Guide. It's a wonderful book. It covers all different types of coins. Next slide. So my motto is knowledge is king. It's listed in my books, and it is what it is. The more you spend time learning, the better you're going to be at doing this. And it's fun and it's profitable. Practice makes perfect. You got to trust me, it gets easier. Every time you do it, it gets easier and easier. Look at as many silver dollars as you can. You will find amazing coins. They're still out there, especially at dealers' tables, at dealers' shops, on eBay. Lots of places you can look for coins. It's fun to hunt for them. It's fun to find them. And when you find one that you can cherry pick, it's an awful lot of fun. It's very enjoyable. Everything you learn about these Morgan silver dollars can be applied to other series, both in the US and in world coins. Most of all, I really like you to enjoy. If you have any questions whatsoever, contact me. My email address is fayms@aol.com. I'm happy to answer any questions I can for you. I'm happy to provide you with any information that would help you to enjoy your hobby more and to get into it more and to make it fun and profitable. And finally, my last slide. If you're interested in knowing what your coins are worth, you might want to check out my complete virtual guide to pricing Morgan silver dollars, which is currently an ebook on Amazon.com. You can download it. It's dirt cheap. It's $9.95. Can't go wrong. The information in there is absolutely valuable. If you read this book, and you should, it's an easy read. The coins you find will pay for this book 1,000-fold, maybe more. And I'm not kidding. You will love this. And that's the end of my talk here. And I hope it's been helpful for you. And feel free to contact me. And thank you, Ray, for your assistance. Bye-bye.